Should basketball players do intermittent fasting? In today's video, we're going to discuss 3 things you need to consider when deciding if intermittent fasting is the right thing for you or not. In recent years, intermittent fasting has gained quite a bit of popularity, and it's basically the idea that you have a certain eating window during the day, and outside of that time window, you don't eat. So for example, a lot of people will do what's called a 16-8 intermittent fast. And that's when you fast for 16 hours and you only eat in those 8 hours. Now, this can be a very good strategy in certain situations. So today I want to go over some things you really need to consider when deciding if this is right for you, because I see a lot of basketball players and athletes in general misuse this strategy when it really shouldn't be used in that context. So the first thing we need to consider, let's see if you can guess it at this point, because I always say this in pretty much any video I shoot ever. The first thing we need to consider is calories. Are you going to be able to meet your calorie needs following a protocol like this? And a lot of times for basketball players who are in a performance-oriented phase or a muscle-building phase, that's going to be very difficult. Even for larger, more active basketball players in a fat loss phase, this can still be difficult to meet your overall calorie needs. So if by following an intermittent fasting approach where you're limiting yourself to 6 hours, 8 hours, even 10 hours of eating per day, that can be tough to fit all your calories in, whether it's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 calories a day. And you and I both know at this point that calories in versus calories out is the main determining factor of your progress when it comes to performance, when it comes to aesthetics, or any goal you're trying to achieve. So if you're not able to hit your calorie goal and it's being limited by this diet that you're following, or this approach that you're using, it's probably not the best approach for you. Building off calories, the second thing we need to consider is your total macronutrient intake. Because along with calories, that's another foundational component of your nutrition plan that is a major priority. And again, if this dietary approach limits your ability to actually stick to your macros or meet your macronutrient needs, it's probably not the best dietary approach for you. And with intermittent fasting, you often find this issue with things like protein, where it's typically best to spread your protein intake pretty evenly throughout the day. And if you're keeping your eating window within an 8-hour window or less than that, it's going to be difficult to appropriately spread your protein intake throughout the day. And if you try to stick to every 3 to 4 hour meal cadence or meal timing, it's going to be difficult to actually meet your protein needs. So it's just something to consider, and along with the other macros as well, that kind of builds off the calories thing we were talking about before. Just kind of squeezing everything into that small window makes it very difficult. So again, something you need to consider. If you can meet your calorie needs and you can meet your macronutrient needs, doing something like intermittent fasting won't necessarily hurt you. It just makes it more difficult to do all those things. So if that's a priority for you, which it should be, and you're trying to perform better or gain muscle, it's probably not a good strategy. Now, before we get into the third thing we need to consider, definitely be sure to drop a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far and you're finding it helpful for you. And then the third and final thing we need to discuss is, what are your goals? So this kind of wraps up the previous 2 things we talked about, so calories and macros, because your calories and macros are going to depend on what your goal is. So if your goal is to build muscle, your calorie needs are going to be very, very high. So therefore, intermittent fasting is probably not a great strategy for you, because it's going to be tough to fit all those calories and fit the appropriate macronutrients into that small eating window. Same thing with performance. As a basketball player, especially if you're a larger player, it's going to be tough to make that happen. So intermittent fasting may not be the approach for you. Now, if your goal is fat loss, and you have a very small or relatively small, you shouldn't really be going super low calorie ever, but if you're in a deficit and you find yourself feeling hungry, intermittent fasting can be a great way to build adherence to a fat loss nutrition plan. Because by limiting yourself to eating within that 6 to 8 hour window, whatever the time window is, you're making it more likely that you're gonna end up in a calorie deficit and therefore achieve the fat loss that you're after. It's not a necessity for fat loss by all means. You can achieve fat loss by not doing intermittent fasting, but for some people it can be a helpful tool. So that would be the one scenario where it might be beneficial. But even then, for a lot of basketball players, your fat loss macros or fat loss calorie prescription or energy needs is still gonna be pretty high because you're so active. So even in a fat loss phase, it might not be the best tool for you to use, but it can be a little bit more useful in that situation. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. Definitely comment down below. Have you ever used intermittent fasting? Have you experimented with it before? How did it go for you? Let me know, comment down below. And if you're someone who's trying to build muscle the right way, I'm gonna link a playlist here on the screen right now for you to check out. It's actually gonna go through how to build a muscle building nutrition plan for basketball players from start to finish. So check that out. Drop a like on this video, subscribe for new videos every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and I will see you in that next video.